The National Desk, America's News Now.
Today, excuse me. Today was a very good day, and we're going to build on it, drawing inspiration and continued courage from it.
Americans jailed in Russia, freed. Coming up, inside the multi-country deal that marks the biggest prisoner exchange seen between Russia and the West since the Cold War. Then, a wide-reaching sex and human trafficking ring busted. The unusual place the perpetrators were found, and what we're learning tonight about the victims. Plus, cancer rising. Younger generations now more likely to be diagnosed with 17 types of cancer as compared to previous generations. The explanation researchers are offering for why. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Tonight, Americans jailed in Russia, including Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich and former U.S. Marine Paul Whelan, finally free. And just take a look at this group photo here. You can see some of those freed prisoners, smiling faces. This posted on President Biden's account. Their freedom, the result of a complicated multi-country swap, the biggest prisoner exchange between Russia and the West since the Cold War. The National Desk's Matt Gelka has more on the remarkable release, years in the making, and who was exchanged in return.
Their brutal ordeal is over, and they're free.
The president celebrated with the families of now freed prisoners. Jailed Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich had been detained in Russia for more than 490 days. And former U.S. Marine Paul Whelan was arrested there nearly 6 years ago and had been a prisoner ever since. Both were released after the largest prisoner exchange between the United States and Russia since the end of the Cold War.
We stand for freedom, for liberty, for justice, not only for our own people, but for others as well. And that's why all Americans can take pride in what we've achieved today.
Russian-American journalist Alsu Kurmasheva and legal resident Vladimir Kara-Murza will also be returning to America. They're part of a group of 16 people being released from Russia and heading to the U.S. and Germany. Russia is getting 8 people back in the deal, including ones with ties to Russian intelligence and hacking. The apparent sticking point was Vadim Krasikov, a convicted murderer now freed from Germany and returning to his home.
You know, if you have spoken to the families of the people who've had to go through this, you know what just a euphoric moment it is. But of course, that euphoria is always tempered by the knowledge of the kinds of criminals that we trade innocent people for.
Russia has notoriously held prisoners in the past for leverage. Nearly 2 years ago, USA basketball star Brittany Griner was brought home in exchange for a Russian arms dealer nicknamed the Merchant of Death. The president was asked how to stop it from happening again going forward.
Advising people not to go certain places. Tell them what's at risk, what's at stake.
The Wall Street Journal reports that the complex negotiations were sealed when Biden was on a phone call with the Prime Minister of Slovenia on July 21st. About an hour later, he decided not to seek re-election. For the National Desk in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
Former Houston Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee was laid to rest today. She died 2 weeks ago at the age of 74 after being treated for pancreatic cancer. Vice President Kamala Harris spoke at the funeral this afternoon.
Sheila Jackson Lee understood the privilege and obligation and nobility of public service. And through her service, she did untold good.
Happy Juneteenth, and thank you so very much for having me.
The Democrat represented her Houston-based district for nearly 3 decades. Jackson Lee helped lead federal efforts to recognize Juneteenth as a national holiday and fought to protect women from domestic violence. Harris says that as one of Congress's most prominent black women, Jackson Lee was a champion of social justice. Also today, the Democratic National Convention opened their virtual nomination process this morning to formally place Vice President Kamala Harris on the ticket. Harris will be the only name on the ballot. Any delegate not supporting her will have to vote present. Voting ends at 6 p.m. on Monday, August 5th. A full count will be shared after the completion. And a live look right now over Chicago, Illinois. That's where the Democratic National Convention will be held from August 19th to the 22nd. There will be ceremonial votes at that point for Harris and her running mate, who is expected to be revealed next week, possibly as early as Monday. Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance continues to attack Kamala Harris for her border record. Today, Vance visited a stretch of the Arizona-Mexico border notorious for fentanyl smuggling. He argued the U.S. needs to stop its catch and release policy and finish the border wall.
It's hard to believe until you see it with your own eyes just how bad the policies of the Kamala Harris administration have been when it comes to the southern border.
Illegal migrant crossings at the southern border declined for the 5th month in a row in July. Preliminary Customs and Border Protection numbers show there were around 56,000 apprehensions, the lowest level seen since September of 2020. It's a big change from December, when there were 250,000 apprehensions. Mexico has been stopping more migrants from heading north, and the U.S. added new asylum restrictions in June. 14 arrested, 10 victims rescued after a huge sex and human trafficking ring busted at the San Diego Comic-Con convention over the weekend. Authorities said today California Department of Justice officers took part in a 3-day sting operation, posed undercover as sex buyers to identify the solicitors and the victims. 9 adults and one 16-year-old girl were recovered. The convention staff was not aware or part in any way of the operation. And tonight, road rage shootings on the rise in the United States. A recent analysis shows these incidents have increased by more than 400% in just 9 years. The National Desk's Janae Bowens shows us the footage that's driving the troubling numbers and a warning that some of the images you're about to see are disturbing.
That was the devastating moment Delonte Hicks was shot on a Maryland highway by a driver he had exchanged words with. Hicks died that day and left behind 3 kids and his fiancée.
You can see the change in my children. You can see a little light diminish from them. It broke me. It was the worst thing I ever heard in my life.
Police are still looking for the suspect. These incidents are becoming more common. A recent report from The Trace, an organization dedicated to reporting on gun violence, shows the number of people shot in road rage incidents increased from 92 in 2014 to 481 last year.
Guns are more readily available. I think that we feel more threatened. I think we came out of the pandemic and we all thought, yay, it's over. We are still feeling the effects of that. And it's affected how our need to feel like that we have to take care of ourselves to survive.
Dr. Lee Richardson is the CEO of the Brain Performance Center in Dallas, Texas. She says road rage comes from environmental and psychological factors.
They're in a reactionary mode. They're constantly reacting, and they're not taking the time to stop and think through the consequences.
Sometimes those consequences can negatively change someone's life forever.
It was senseless. It didn't make any sense.
And President Joe Biden's new rules for Title IX that expands protections for LGBTQ students go into effect today, but only in 24 states. Title IX was initially signed into law in 1972 to prohibit sexual discrimination and inequalities for girls in schools. These 26 states have sued in separate cases to block the regulation, saying that allowing biological males to compete with girls in athletics violates the initial meaning of the law. Right now, dozens of workers recovering from inhaling ammonia at a Ford manufacturing facility in Loudoun County, Virginia. According to fire and EMS officials, at least 33 people were hospitalized last night after an ammonia leak that was quickly secured. 5 people had very serious injuries. The company said 29 workers are out of the hospital, but 4 patients are still being cared for as of this morning. Coming up, new details about the financial impact of last year's devastating Maui wildfires and how they're really still bleeding into 2024. Then the latest from the Olympics, including the historic achievement today by American swimmer Katie Ledecky, and later A North Carolina woman almost lost thousands of dollars because of a jury duty scam. What you need to know to avoid becoming victim. Right now, 97 million Americans at risk for severe thunderstorms from coast to coast. The highest risk is in parts of the Midwest, the Ohio Valley in particular, with a threat of damaging winds, flash flooding, and hail. The National Hurricane Center says it's looking more likely that a disturbance in the West Atlantic Ocean could also develop into a tropical storm. Tropical Storm Debbie within the next few days. Current models put southern Florida and parts of Louisiana at risk as the storm moves over the Gulf of Mexico. The Hurricane Center says the slower the system moves, the stronger it will get. The system is expected to hit the U.S. coast as early as Saturday or as late as Monday. And new details on that $4 billion global settlement expected for communities hit hard by Maui's devastating wildfires. It could come as early as next week. That's according to the AP's latest reporting. A settlement nears as we approach the one-year mark of the fires that killed over 100 people and destroyed the historic city of Lahaina. More than 600 lawsuits have been filed over those fires. And the cash boost will be welcomed as a new report sheds light on the financial impact Hawaiians are still feeling from the Lahaina fire. Almost half of Maui residents say their financial situation has gotten worse since the crippling blaze, according to the Hawaii State Rural Health Association. And as many as 1 in 5 say at this point they would consider leaving Maui or even Hawaii altogether. And when it comes to affording groceries, upwards of 2/3 of fire survivors said that they had trouble in the last year, and half have had to cut back on medical care because of not being able to afford it anymore. 3 of the men accused of plotting the September 11th attacks have agreed to a plea deal. The National Desk's Kayla Gaskins joining us now from Washington with what we know so far about the deal and how families of the victims are reacting.
In Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, the planners of the 9/11 terror attacks have sat in a jail cell, awaiting trial for more than 20 years, while the families of the victims wait for some form of justice.
Killing Americans has to cost you something. Killing Americans should come at a price.
On Wednesday, news breaking that the man accused of masterminding the attack and 2 of his accomplices agreed to plead guilty to conspiracy and murder charges. In exchange, they'll avoid the death penalty, but are expected to spend life in prison. Senators from both parties voicing concerns over the agreement.
I am very concerned about this plea deal, and I think we ought to scrutinize it very carefully
I just think it sends absolutely the wrong signal at the wrong time. The world is on fire, terrorism is rampant, and we give a plea deal to the mastermind of 9/11. That just encourages more attacks.
The victims' families were the first to be told the news through a letter from the work court. Prosecutors say the deal was meant to bring some finality and justice to the case for the loved ones. The reaction has been mixed. We spoke with Don Arias. His brother worked in the World Trade Center and died that day.
I have a lot of complex feelings about this whole thing. This thing could have been in legal limbo for the rest of our lives. So I guess in a way, there's a little bit of relief mixed with frustration. No penalty could possibly fit the crime.
New York Congresswoman Nicole Maliotakis' office calling any plea deal unacceptable, adding they owe it to the victims and the victims' families to pursue the death penalty. J.D. Vance leaning into the backlash.
They're cutting a sweetheart deal with 9/11 terrorists. We need a president who kills terrorists, not negotiates with them.
As part of the deal, the defendants also agreed to answer questions from the victims' families on their roles and reasoning for the attack. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
Kayla, thank you. The child tax credit is in danger of lapsing. Senate Republicans blocked a procedural measure to pass a bipartisan compromise that made it out of the House earlier this year. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said Republicans still had unresolved issues with the language, while Senate Leader Schumer said everyone was on board except the Senate Republicans.
Even House Republicans managed to unite long enough to pass this bill. With great respect to Senate Republicans, it's never a good sign to be more obstructionist than Republicans in the House.
Leader Schumer also introducing legislation today to reverse the Supreme Court's landmark decision on presidential immunity last month. The bill, named the No Kings Act, would declare presidents are not immune from criminal law and that Congress, not the court, gets to decide who federal criminal law applies to. The High Court ruled presidents have broad immunity for criminal prosecution for actions taken when they're in office. The frustration of families sitting apart on flights may soon come to an end. A new rule would force airlines to seat kids and their parents together within 48 hours of booking when possible. It would also ban fees for seating kids 13 and under next to parents. The Transportation Secretary argued this new proposal is common sense. The White House says it would save a family of four up to $200 round trip. In the battle of the last two all-around gymnastic gold medalists, teammates Simone Biles and Suni Lee were competitors today. With Simone winning her 5th gold and 9th medal in the Olympics, Suni Lee finished with the bronze. Biles briefly lost the lead after an uneven bar routine, but retook the lead on the beam, and her unbeatable floor routine clinched it for the all-time great. From one Olympic icon to another, Katie Ledecky, now the all-time most decorated female Olympian ever, winning her 13th medal, surpassing Olympic great Jenny Thompson with 12, winning a silver in the 4x200 free relay. Yesterday, Ledecky tied Thompson's Olympic mark when she won the 1500-meter freestyle, earning her 8th gold medal. Tomorrow, she has the chance for another medal, possibly even a gold, when she swims in the 800-meter freestyle, where she's the overwhelming favorite to win. And after an amazing day of medals for the United States, the U.S. remains the top medal earner with 37. Today alone, Team USA got 5 golds more than doubling their total. 2 silvers and 1 bronze. France and China remain 2nd and 3rd in the medal count with 27 and 23 respectively. And China still has the most golds with 11. Gen Xers and millennials have a higher risk of developing 17 cancers compared to their parents and older generations. Medical reporter Liz Bonis breaks down the numbers from a new study that says the trend worsens even before the COVID pandemic.
She was busy working and going to school here at Northern Kentucky University when Gabby says she felt a lump in her breast one day in the shower.
And I just kind of pushed it off because I didn't expect anything.
She didn't expect anything, she eventually told Dr. Matthew Kurian here at Kentucky's St. Elizabeth Cancer Center. because she was so young.
I'm 22 now, and I got diagnosed at 21.
Luckily, when Gabby was diagnosed with breast cancer, Dr. Kurian was able to personalize her care and treatment, so she is now back on the road to recovery.
The term that we use nowadays in medical oncology is called precision medicine, and I think that nowadays we are trying to analyze people's cancer at a molecular level and trying to understand what makes it tick.
Perhaps never is this more important than right now, as this new study released by the American Cancer Society tells us.
The risk for developing cancer, including colorectal cancer, uterine cancer, liver cancer, and breast cancer, you are more likely to develop cancer in your 30s and 40s if you were born in the 1990s and 1980s than your parents were who were born in the 1950s and 1940s.
Dr. Doug Flora, Vice Chair of the Midwest Regional American Cancer Society Board and the Executive Medical Director here at this cancer center, tells me.
This study really codifies what we are seeing in clinic for the last couple of years. There have been a lot of really hard, sad cases here where we've had people who are much younger than expected presenting for cancers that are typically thought of as old person's cancers.
So the first logical question that comes up is, do we know why?
The authors of the study have posited is that probably there's been some exposure of these earlier generations to something in their early developmental phases.
Dr. Flora says that could be anything from environmental toxins to diet differences, which can lead to mutations, which can cause a cancer later.
Liz Bonus reporting there. And coming up, the heroic action 3 Nevada police officers took when they came across a burning apartment with no firefighters in sight. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we begin in North Carolina with a concerning jury duty scam. A Nashville woman almost lost more than $2,000 from a jury duty scam on Monday. She got a voice message from someone claiming to be from Buncombe County Sheriff's Office. When she called back, a scammer said she had missed jury duty and had to pay a fee or face the consequences. She went online to submit the payment and realized it could be a scam.
When they gave me the PayPal at Paul Zimmer 527, and I was like, I was expecting like a Buncombe County Gov something, and then it was like Paul Zimmer, and I was like, this, and I literally said, this doesn't feel right.
Attorneys say you will always get something in the mail for actual jury duty, and if you miss your court date, no one will call you and demand any money.
Watch 2 State Ferry's crew members race away from the Walla Walla to reach 3 people and a dog stranded in the water near the port of Bremerton.
They had capsized, and that was when they launched into action.
Their 13-foot boat was overloaded and taking on water before it capsized. The ferry crew pulled a 64-year-old man and a dog out of the water. Neither appeared to be wearing a life jacket.
If you are a nurse, doctor, EMT, please come find the crew members. Thank you.
Back on board the ferry, crew members, with the help of medically trained passengers, started treating the rescued man.
He had a few minor abrasions, but other than that, he was mostly hypothermic.
While crews worked to warm that man's core body temperature, a crew member did the same for the rescued dog, wrapping it and keeping it warm in a blanket.
Hey, just stay right there. Come to this corner right here. Come to this corner.
The rescue was caught on body cam video. A fully involved apartment fire at Reno and Tamarisk, December 27th, and a resident who desperately needed help.
Anyone else inside?
3 Metro officers were first on scene. Christopher Marcolini, along with Carlos Silva and Jesus Manzanito, quickly developed a plan. Pushing a nearby dumpster under the balcony, they were able to climb up and help a trapped resident escape the fire.
I'm so sorry.
She was very apologetic. I felt very bad for her. She had no reason to apologize. We're just happy to be here to get her off that ledge.
Now their quick thinking is being recognized.
Their selfless act of courage exemplifies the highest standards of LVMPD.
In front of a packed meeting room, presented the Unit Meritorious Service Award.
Planetary scientists just made a gem of a discovery. Coming up, the precious mineral that could be lurking under the solar system's smallest planet. Mercury is the smallest planet in our solar system, but could there be more to it than previously thought? Scientists now believe there could be an 11-mile layer of diamonds hiding under the surface. Researchers say it forms over time because of the planet's high pressure, high temperature, and richness in carbon. Those conditions, they say, are perfect for seeing a diamond crystallize, but don't think we'll be mining for diamonds on Mercury anytime soon. Mercury's extreme temperature swings from day to night, getting as hot as 800 degrees Fahrenheit, make it particularly challenging for human exploration. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful night.